Welcome to another edition of the RXXR. Today, we've got three very exciting guests who are innovators and inventors in their own right. They've dedicated their lives, or at least the last few years, to doing things to help other people. We will go through the usual, do some welcome intros, some little overview of what's going on in the XR world, and then we'll dive into these three presentations to talk about what they've been doing and why. Randy, over to you.
So our presenters are going to present their products, or their creations, I should say, for approximately 15 minutes, and then we'll have a 5-minute question and answer. And we are really, really thankful that these guys are doing this. This is a really nice group of folks with very different approaches. So we're going to start with Rick, and then we'll hand it over to Gabriel, and then we'll end with Toby. And I am going to let these guys do their major self-introductions because I think they have a little bit more to add than I do. And we're going to start with some industry updates, though. And I think I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff now.
All right, so two major things we'll talk about today. What's been going on in the world of XR that are relevant for the medical industry, a little bit of a breakthrough on some hardware, as well as some updates of events where Randy just went to one of the VMed events. So he'll give an overview of that. So let's dive in. If anybody's not aware, there's been an announcement recently for these new trackers from Vive. The old pucks, which you may remember, which actually are like this, and they're about the size of a large clenched fist almost, I guess is a good way to say it. That was the original one. The blue one there, it was the second generation, which was a little bit smaller. These new Vive pucks are even smaller now, which is about the size of a small wallet, perhaps, or a card wallet. But what's cool about them is, if you can tell, they have cameras in them. That means they are completely standalone devices. They don't need the Lighthouse cameras, which means they can now work with headsets that don't have the need for the lighthouses, so standalone headsets. So that means, especially for things like rehab, this could be really, really useful. You can see a picture in the bottom corner there of them attached to someone's feet, but you can actually attach a load of these together and actually monitor all different parts of the body. So for anything that's medical or rehab orientated, I think this could be really, really good. With that being said, Randy, do you want to talk about the event you just went to?
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, there was an event in Los Angeles in Cedars-Sinai, and it was very medically oriented. Many of the attendees were physicians, and they represented a lot of the different disciplines within medicine. There were surgeons, there were psychiatrists, there was general practitioners. And basically, it was a 2-day seminar, and they presented a lot about what is cutting edge as far as presenting virtual reality and mixed reality in medicine. There was a lot of displays, and they do something nice at the very end. They do 10 takeaways, but there was a couple takeaways that I thought were very important. There was 2 presentations that talked about the medical application of VR, how it affects the brain, how it affects the immune system. And the research is going to be published. It's not specific to VR, but it has a lot of applications. And one of the big takeaways is using this to further guide the application of VR with medicine. So that was the big takeaway. There's another thing that's happening, and I think I'm going to forget the organization, so I'll post it later on. But there is a medical organization now for VR and it's very interdisciplinary. And I'll put that link out a little bit later on because I am blanking out right now on that particular organization. But it's run by a physician. And I think there's close to 200 people in the organization right now.
Are you thinking of Bob Fine's IVRHA?
No.
No.
Can you, in about 2 or 3 sentences, can you tell us a little bit about that, though?
Bob Fine he's I don't know, he's does a lot of things. I know I met him because he's an adjunct professor at Champlain College, and he's been teaching VR up there. But he has a strong interest in VR use in healthcare, and so he started an organization called IVRHA. They just had their annual, I think it was their annual conference in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago. They're having another one in Helsinki in October. If you just look for ivrha.org, I think you can find it. I don't have the link right in front of me. I can look it up while we're working here, but I don't know that much about it. I know that like Veena Somreddy of Neuro Rehab presented there. And like I said, I don't know much more.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. No, this is a little bit different. It's more physician run. I think that is more global. I think there's a lot of therapists involved. That is a bigger organization, I think, if I remember correctly. So I just found the organization I was talking about, and it's AMXRRA, and I'll post that a little bit later on. And it's amxra.org if you want to look it up. So that's about all I have for updates on VMed23. It's a really good organization, really good conference. I recommend it. Once again, it's a bit on the medical side, but really good organization. It's up and coming. And thanks, Rick, for posting that other one too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
So, yeah. So, Jeff, do you want to introduce Rick, and we'll get the ball rolling?
Yeah. So very pleased to have our first guest of the day. His name's Rick Tett. You just heard him spoke a few moments ago there. He's the founder of Hoboloco, as well as the inventor. And his details are all on the page right here, but you save that and pass it over to him right now. I'll share this screen as well.
Let me start my slide. Beginning. This confuses me how to get this. I guess I have to share first. Then I can open it up. Let's see, come on. There we go. From beginning. There we go. Everybody seeing okay? All right. I'm Rick Tett. I'm founder and inventor of Hoboloco. Here today to tell you about the revolutionary new foot controller that I've created. So first foot controller for video games and VR that is ergonomic and easy to use. And it is made for seated use. My first prototype, frankly, was a standing device, but then I realized seated setting would be a very good option, an alternative to all the standing options that are out there. And it's a natural, intuitive. It's more ergonomical than some, say, the 3D rudder, in my opinion, which is unfortunately no longer with us. But it allows you to move around in a virtual space. This is just a video game that I picked up, but you can see on the right-hand side where it operates kind of like a hoverboard or tank controls in some cases. Some people like to think of can go backwards, forwards, or pivot in place, and basically to go straight forward, you're putting your feet down, your toes down equally, and if you back off your right foot, you're going to veer to the right. If you back off your left foot, you'll veer to the left. If you put your left heel all the way back, you're going to spin around. Or you put your toes back, you can go backwards. We've also added a strafing action, which isn't shown in this particular example, but it uses basically a roll of the ankle. So you roll your foot and it releases a switch. and that allows you to strafe. So this can be used, like I said, in VR or in gaming. We've tried it in various first-person shooter games, tactical simulations, sports. It can be configured in different ways, and I can bring up the configurator here in a little bit. Certainly, we feel like in the game space, there's been, there's sort of the category of simulation pedals for flight sim and racing. There's switches like a Frag Pedal, Elgato, Liberator that are kind of just buttons. There's the Wii Fit board and the 3D rudder that were more like rotating. I think Stinky a little bit that way. Beacon is an attachment that I've never tried, but that kind of gives you the landscape. We just feel like Hoboloco, because your feet can rest on it. It doesn't involve your hips or any movement above your knee generally. So it's really ergonomic. Of course, we know about the reason you might want to have this in VR is so that you can move around freely and not have to teleport. The inspiration for this device, as you can see in this video, was the hoverboard. I had seen my nephew on his hoverboard, and I was actually working on a VR exhibit for a local science museum, and it just dawned on me that we could combine that and basically make a digital hoverboard. And you can see in the picture on this one in the lower right, where you can see the flaps that are used for the sideways roll of the foot. We just think that this would be good for various training applications and stuff where you don't have to have that big space where people have to move around. And the competition in the VR space is such that you have the very expensive Infinideck. You've got Catwalk, Omni, WizDish, the kind of the slide dishes, I'd call them, that are, you generally require a harness. Cyber Shoes is out there. I have not tried it, but seems pretty aerobic. A lot of activity. It has rollers on the bottoms of the feet. VR Go is kind of an interesting one. You actually sit on the device and lean your body to turn or go forward. And again, I haven't tried that device, but we feel like in the VR space, again, the Hoboloco is quite ergonomic. We've got 5 patents granted both in the US, China, Japan, and Korea. And we've got prototypes. We're really ready to go to manufacturing. Probably a little bit of finished design by the manufacturing partners, but we're generally ready to go. We're in the process of raising some funding for that, and because this is a healthcare forum, I thought I'd mention that we have thought that it could have some benefit and potential uses when paired with a video game for, say, stroke rehab, because we can measure the independent movement of each foot. And we could provide the input into the game such that you could augment or support maybe if the person has very limited use, all they have to do is maybe tweak it a little bit to get get some feedback that they're starting to move their foot, and maybe gradually take some of that assistance away. Same with ankle movement therapy. DVT prevention is something that I've also included in my patents. I foresaw that maybe somebody might want to put this on an airplane in front of them at the base of their seat and play a game every 20 minutes to keep their ankles and keep their legs from forming clots. Our plans are to donate controllers to disabled veterans who have been able to play video games since they had upper limb trauma, and others for that matter that were born or have limited use, maybe severe arthritis. We do our best to hire veterans. We currently have an intern from UTD that's a former Marine, and he's a Marine reservist. And we want to have environmentally and disability-friendly packaging. We're certainly looking for strategic investor and partner introductions, game companies, and spread the word. And I just wanted to show for a second if I can get to it. Can I get to it? Yeah. My configurator. This configurator allows me, if I pick a profile, such as a game, I can come in here and I can change the settings in terms of if it's a keyboard mouse comment. If we've configured it as a keyboard and mouse, I can actually change the characters of what goes in at each particular movement. And then we can also do some things like overdrive, where it'll actually do an extra left shift if you press a little farther. We can adjust the sensitivity for rotation and just generally staying on a path. We can change the dead zones and all that kind of stuff, and we can do that. But we can also switch to a gamepad mode. I also have developed a test app in the Quest 2. Unfortunately, Quest, a lot of VR apps require this product to be sort of built in, whereas video gaming, we can really work with out of the box. So we haven't had a lot of progress on the VR market, to be honest. But that's where we're at, and be glad to answer any questions about us.
Thanks, Rick. Don't be shy. Just unmute and ask them in person, and we'll try to keep it coordinated as much as possible. I could see a lot of application for this product. I could think of several people who have different diagnoses that can only use their feet, such as sometimes with ALS, they start.
Randy, stealing my thunder here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Teresa.
No, it's fine. No,
I'll tell you what. I'll talk about central cord injury and spinal cord injury, and then you can do that part. Okay. So,
well,
Teresa,
you said unmute, so I was like, yay! I have some questions. Questions about the demographic of people that might have ALS or other neurodegenerative progressive diseases. How easy would you, how much pressure are you needing for turning, and can you scale that? So if somebody has very limited muscular control of their feet and wanted to be able to, as if simulate it to push it further, even though they couldn't physically push it forth. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, absolutely. The challenge there, yes, we can adjust the tension by putting different springs in. We do not have it where it's adjustable dynamically, like the product. You can't just change a screw. That's an idea that we've considered maybe putting into a product at some point, where you could adjust it dynamically. Mm-hmm. The thing we have to figure out is there's also needs to be, at least for some uses, there has to be a pretty clear neutral zone. And so if you make it too soft, then it's maybe harder to find that neutral zone and keep it in that neutral zone. Mm-hmm. If you can understand that. We've thought about adding some sort of detents where it sort of clicks in and out of that neutral zone. We haven't done that at this point.
I'm thinking, I guess the way my brain is thinking is, if somebody has ALS and they like to play video games and they've lost control of their upper limbs, if all they have is their lower limbs, let's say, and they wanted to play a game with their voice and maybe their feet, right? Would that be adaptable? So if they have pretty good control all the way until it's weaker. I'm just trying to think about.
Well, I would love to explore that. I'm not that familiar with the ALS condition. I didn't realize that some of them had
so I'm thinking of progressive diseases where it progresses.
I would love to. I think there is definitely potential to do some research there.
Where are you located? I'm sorry, where are you located?
I'm in Plano, Texas, north side of Dallas.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll follow up with you. I'm not in a place to add that right now, but I'm going to make a note of it so that when I get my other projects tampered down a little bit, then I can circle back to this, because I think it'd be a great tool for occupational therapists to learn this as an additional resource for gaming and computer
The 3D rudder previously for that exact reason with an ALS client who wanted to game and was losing the function in his thumbs. And it was a great way to sort of spread out the muscle use throughout the day.
Yeah.
So this is great to see there's something like this on the market.
Great. And where can people tell me where you're located, Teresa?
I am in the Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Spokane, Washington, and just depending on what side of the fence you're on, I'll say which one I'm from.
Are you associated with a university or a medical?
I am. I'm with WSU, Washington State University. I designed the Adaptive Technology Center, and so I'm trying to bring in. I do community outreach, education, and I'm trying to change curriculum as well around these diseases. And these students haven't touched the majority of the equipment that these families are now utilizing. And so we need to change that. So
that'd be awesome. And we're willing to cooperate on STTRs, SBIRs, anything like that.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's connect then, because I also have SP3 Northwest who can help support you in those endeavors. And I know they have matching grants and things like that. So they're really into all of that stuff. So yeah.
Hi, Rick. I had another question.
You bet.
So my name is Christy. I'm an occupational therapist at the OSU Assistive Technology Center. And I work with our seating clinic, and I also am in our smart clinic where we do adaptive gaming as well. So the prospect of a foot controller is something that we work with for operating power chairs, but it's good to know that, something is coming around for, other things like gaming and whatnot. Could you tell us a little bit more about like what kind of input jacks we're using for this? Like, how are you connecting it to the device?
Right now we have two different versions. I have a USB version that right now only supports keyboard and mouse input. So it can put in keys. So if you have a game, for example, or an application, it takes character and or mouse input, then you can configure it for that. The other model I have supports gamepad over Bluetooth or keyboard mouse over Bluetooth. I can also provide a serial string that's customizable, so you can read that right into Unity or Unreal and process it.
That's great. Since it has, USB, I'm also thinking of like its potential for use with like a communication device. You plug in as access for that. Super cool. I'll send you a message and say hello.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah,
I'm easy to find on LinkedIn also. All right.
Yeah, I've got a question too. So Rick, what's the expected retail price for this?
Our USB model, we're targeting $199, $200 basically. And for the Bluetooth model, if it depends on, we may or may not bring that out initially, but we think that's going to have to be a little more because of the cost of the processor, the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So that's going to be like $250. That's what we're thinking. If you need something that's a little more industrial, then we might want to have, and if we add some adjustment of spring tension, then that's going to add some more cost.
Well, the main reason I'm asking is because I'm wondering about insurance. And so I know Jeff because I'm a member of the Swedish MS group here in Seattle, Washington. And so I'm just wondering, if as a patient, if I wanted my insurance to cover it, would that be possible? So
I'm kind of missing what you're saying. Is something about shorts?
No, let me slow down. So I know Jeff through the Seattle Swedish MS group. So Jeff has worked with them to create some applications for the press headsets that they have. So my question is really related to the insurance. So if I'm a patient and I want to buy your device, would it be covered by insurance?
Yeah, I doubt it right now, unless I haven't looked into that. I know that some other VR, like the Mind VR headset for elderly, has recently gotten coverage up in the Northeast by some coverage, but no, I haven't looked into that at all. If we can demonstrate it, I'm sure that ultimately it could get there, but probably not right now. Because I'm also planning to sell these commercially, I'm certainly willing to think about ways in which we can get them to people who are more in need of them. Like I said, I want to donate them to different causes. So I think if this takes off, I'm not going to, I want it to take off broadly, because if it takes off broadly, then I can support the community that needs it more.
Right. Well, I'll talk to you offline about.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
If you're looking, so in addition to all the accessibility applications of it, I'm always kind of thinking what we're doing at U of M is a lot of the therapeutic gaming and using it within therapy as interventions. And so I'm kind of always thinking from that framework. And some other applications, if you're looking for more applications for like how it could be used, would be a huge one that I use for using games for people's feet is for like biofeedback for proprioception training for incomplete spinal cord injury or peripheral neuropathy or anything where proprioception is a deficit. Being able to move your legs and feet, and especially in a graded way where you have to do it accurately while also not looking at your body. I love using that type of thing for biofeedback, so that people have to learn how to use their body without looking at it.
Yeah, and I think that the advantage of this over everything else I've seen is that fact that it's analog, first of all, and so like a racing pedal, I guess, but that it also is heel and toe, so it can go bidirectionally, and then it's independent. So versus something like the 3D rudder, which was one plane, where both feet always went together. So the fact is that you can measure the left foot and right foot separately.
Is there a way to?
There's no axle, or there's no bending to the right or left. So it's all, the axle is only forward, backward, except for the fact that I have a switch so you can roll your foot slightly. So there's just a little bit of a roll there. We do not measure that analog today. We could measure that analog, but we just measure that in binary. Anyway, go ahead.
I know you were talking about adjusting it physically with springs and stuff. Is there a way to adjust it digitally at all to where a smaller movement would result in a larger movement on the end of it, on the other end of it?
So it like sort of almost assist it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a possibility. That wouldn't be the product I'm building right now. It would be a little more advanced. That would require some like stepper motors or something in it.
No, so Rick, I think there's actually a way to do. We do similar things all the time with our software. So you can make a small movement, a big movement. If you can, like you said, if you can get a digital measurement out of the movement to see not just binary, but if it's a graduation.
In the game itself, we can adjust the sensitivity. So you can have a very small movement of the foot pad result in a larger movement on.
That's what.
I thought you were talking about where you wanted to have like they pressed slightly and it would go more.
Oh, I see. Nope. Resulted digitally in a larger.
Good call, Jeff. So I think there was one more thing about spinal that who was it that was that Randy that was going to say something else?
Yeah, Rick, I did have a question about that, but we are going to save that. Yeah, we have a little bit of time for discussion later on.
Okay.
So that's I'd love to continue to talk about your product. It's really, really fascinating. But we are going to move on to the next presenter. But thank you very much, Rick. That was awesome. And Gabriel is up next. And Gabriel, I believe I have your presentation. Let me see if I can find that for you.
Yeah, sorry, my Zoom is kind of crashing a lot lately. I don't know why, so I'm just going to play the safe route and just have Randy pull up the presentation.
No, that's fine. So just give me cues when you want to advance.
Yeah.
Just give me a minute to get this started. And I believe we're all set to go.
All right, everybody. My name is Gabriel Ortiz. I'm a third-year PT student, and I'm going to present to you BTE mouse. You can go ahead and next slide. There you go. Okay. So I'm gonna tell a little story about how I came up with the idea. So I was in lecture in a pediatrics class, and the professor has a son that was born with a congenital residual limb on the right arm. And she was mentioning how he uses a Nintendo Switch to play Fortnite. Anybody here play Fortnite, by the way? Anybody? No? Oh. Okay. Yeah, and she was mentioning that, yeah, he plays with the Switch, and I was curious on how he plays. So that got my my mind thinking of, like, if he grows older, he's like 8 or 9 years old. If he grows older and starts getting interested in gaming PC games, whether like shooters or like NBA 2K or those like really high that Nintendo Switch is not compatible with, those games are not compatible with, what if he decides to play PC games? So then I started to create this BTE mouse. Next slide. So here are some examples of single arm amputation. So he's a transradial below the elbow, but it's more closer to the olecranon. He has just a little bit below the elbow. And yeah, these are some types of single arm amputation examples. Next slide. And the target population for this mouse is the 1.8 million, because around the world, because they're below the elbow. But maybe in the future with product design and maybe updates, we can target the 3 million with worldwide with arm amputations. But for now, maybe it's the 1.8 million. Next slide. So here are some accessibility devices on the market right now. We all know the Xbox Adaptive one. And they recently came out with some accessories, adaptive accessories that they put through Shapeways. So anybody can print them and scale them. And that photo is foreshadowing, just so you guys know. They also have the quad stick, which is more, I think, for quadriplegics with like the tubes, and they need to blow on the tubes and they can move the characters and play like that. And then they also saw this Etsy one where they 3D print like little tubes on the PS4 controllers, and with one hand they move the other side, they press the other sides. So I've seen that also on the market, and those are the prices listed in accordingly. So next slide. So yeah, I'm gonna take you through the ideation process of how I started to like sketch it out. Next slide. You're gonna see a picture of hand drawn of what I was thinking. The first one above is like a little hand. It was like a palm, like a ball, and you could put like buttons in. I don't know. It was just an idea. And then the bottom, you see like a type of keyboard with a joystick on top. Next slide, you can get like a better image. That's my first like 3D modeling. I was getting into it. You know, it's a little bit of what I was thinking. And on the next slide, you're going to see a video of, you can play as a video. So you can see like a little, it goes up. Yeah, it goes up. That's kind of how it's going to be. Maybe with some lights underneath. It was going to have USB-C, but figure out a little too expensive. A little too expensive. Next slide. And then, yeah. So I was thinking with that joystick, how can the person with the residual limb control that joystick? So I worked with an engineer to try to build the most ergonomic type of attachment so the person can put the residual limb on top so they can control the character better. And that's what we came up with. And then next slide. I got some advice from like, hey, you're like focusing on too many things with the controller and the mouse and the joystick itself. So might as well just focus on one thing. Focus on the mouse, because probably most people are going to have a keyboard. So let's just focus on the mouse. And then these are my how I got some ideas. So that up top is a Atari old arcade controller that I found on Amazon, and the bottom attachment. And then I think this is a Logitech controller from like airplane games or pilot games. And next slide. And that's how I came up with the BTE. So it's a hybrid between a joystick and a mouse, has an ergonomic U-shape to ensure proper resting position of the residual limb. It's wide and stable for those like aggressive movements for shooting games. The top attachment is adaptable, so you can switch up. So this one is flat right here, and then hopefully you can switch off to one of these like Xbox attachments and put it on top. So if one attachment doesn't fit, you can maybe try others. It connects now through USB, and according to a quote, this is not firm. I'll have a market analysis done in around 2 weeks, but rough estimate, 10,000 units will probably cost around 10 to 30 to manufacture. And then in future models, we can maybe implement Bluetooth, but for now it's only USB. Next slide. And yeah, these are some videos of me trying to crack some 90s on the Fortnite arena. Yeah, you can hit play, and pressing down acts as a left click of a mouse. So me pressing down is me putting up the builds there. And then I can control the character by binding different like functions on the keyboard. So right now we don't have a right click function, but you can probably implement or substitute that with pressing a button on the keyboard with the other hand. So for now, it's just only the function of a mouse and then the left click pressing down. Hopefully in the future, we can create a software where that click can do something else, but for now, it's only acts as a left click. And yeah, the movement's done, probably most likely going to be scapular protraction and retraction, elbow extension, and shoulder horizontal abduction and abduction most of the time. Next slide. So the next step. So I submitted this prototype to Tom Global Innovation Challenge. It's like a club, a nonprofit organization that focuses on helping like students or children with like musculoskeletal deficits or disorders or something like that. And I was part of it 2 weeks ago. I think I had an event and I was helping someone build a communication tool for the classroom. A teacher, I was helping a teacher. And yeah, it's open source. I'm hoping to try to help as many people as possible with this device. And yeah, like I was saying, I just got in the Xbox accessibility. You can see it. Yeah, these are like the top D-pads. And yeah, I was trying to like scale them down to the device. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what the lights in. But yeah, I'm trying to scale those adaptive like accessories to the device so people can play better and be more comfortable playing the games. And I'm trying to coordinate with the professor's son to try to record and have him use the prototype so we can get a video to see any feedback that he might have on how to make it better or how to improve it. Next slide. And yeah, some possible impacts on the healthcare system. I mainly see this product working better in an outpatient setting, because in acute care, I'm not pretty sure if it might work. Maybe for motivation, if patient is not motivated enough to do physical therapy or OT. But yeah, in physical therapy and outpatient, you can probably do some scapular retraction holds, maybe isometric. You can play like a game, try to hold that motion, and yeah, maybe in OT, maybe teach them how to do web browsing, because that's a activity of daily living. People are a lot on the web nowadays. So yeah, these are some possibilities of BTE. Next slide. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody on this slide right here, some people that helped me. And there's my LinkedIn if you want to reach out. And thank you so much for listening.
Excellent. So let's open it for some questions.
So Gabriel, Have you looked at any government entities that can help you out in developing your project?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, we put a link in the chat here, Accelerating Medical Device Innovation for Regulatory Service Tools from the FDA. So I'll put that in the chat. You can take a look at it.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
Okay, where's that? Where's that? And are you close to university?
Yeah, I'm close to FIU. Yeah, FIU.
FIU acronym, Florida?
Florida International University.
Okay.
I got a question partly for you, Gabriel, but actually for the rest of the team. You had the 1.7 million amputees there, but I think your audience is actually a lot bigger than that, because there are a whole lot of injuries or disabilities or diseases that limit movement that would vastly expand that number. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair, because maybe, let's say, maybe someone has like a contracture or a hand contracture. They can't like open their hand that much. So maybe an attachment from that mouse can help play video games or web browse. So yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair.
And as a side note on that, actually two side notes. One is I did a presentation to the Amputees Group of America or something like that. I'll have to double check the name. And they were really intrigued by, particularly by yours, Gabriel, but also everybody else's as well, because obviously there's every one of you is bringing something interesting to the table that can help people who are amputees. But on top of that too, as I think everyone's aware, we posted a little bit on social media about these inventions, and somebody wrote up straight away, first person to comment, is like, I want 3 of these right now. So to that extent, Gabriel, how far away are you from being able to actually make a few of these?
Honestly, this was like a side project. I didn't expect it to become this massive, like not massive, obviously, but this thing, to probably put it in the market. So I have the market analysis probably like in 2 weeks. And yeah, by May is the end of the challenge. So by May, it will probably be on the Tom website or open source for all those communities to build. So yeah, I'll start. I didn't know I was gonna get orders today when you sent me that tweet. I was like, I was at work. I was like, what is this? But yeah, I don't know yet. If that's the short answer. I don't know yet.
Gabriel, I just love the ideation part of your presentation. It was really, really interesting. It's really inspiring. And thanks for putting it on open source too. That's awesome. So people can build it for themselves too if they don't have the funding. So I just wanted to reach out and say there is a lot of application for it besides amputation I can see. And I think people can really use it a lot. Everything is so customized, not you know this better than anything, but not one solution works for everybody. So thanks so much.
Thank you guys for having me. And thank you for the feedback. And Paul, I sent you thank you for the link. I'll definitely read it later.
Well, great. Is there any other questions for Gabriel? If not, you can save them for the end and we'll move on. So thanks so much again. That was awesome. And our next speaker, is he still on with us? I know he was having a little bit of trouble.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Toby.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Nothing like way out in the woods.
So welcome, Toby. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your creation.
Oh boy. All right. Well, I've been a tinker my whole life, and when the Oculus DK1 kit came out, I knew VR had finally arrived. So I got one, and one day I got sick in VR real easy. And one day, out of nowhere, I had a realization that when you move your feet, your legs are the first thing your body uses to move, and then your visual changes. And when that is messed up, when like your visual changes and your body didn't do anything to make it move except to press a button with your keyboard, that disassociation to me gave me my VR sickness. And I realized, okay, so I need a set of controls that I can use with my feet to move around in VR. Went and looked on the market. That Stinky Foot and the VR Rudder, I think, were about the only things available. And they were completely inadequate to what I wanted. I wanted massive output and customizable. So I mocked up something out of wood and a quick Unity 3D scene, and it worked. I ran around happy as a clam in VR without getting motion sick. And this is going to be a little rough. My initial design was this, 1 foot, obviously. The paddles are supposed to be in these slots. They're not in there at the moment. The gears allow you to change the tension of the base plate pedal, the distance between the 2 side paddles, and then how tall the top paddle would be. Anyway, this monstrosity of clockwork that I designed, I quickly realized was not what I needed to start with. So, oh, sorry guys. I made this. And this is basically the same thing, but with no clockwork. It's just paddles stuck in that you can pull out and change in order to create a different amount of space for your foot to fit in. Plugs in via USB. This is an old design. It's made of wood. 3D printing. This is my latest design. Got a port for the USB cable to come out. Turn it around. Open it up. And the same concept refined. So feet go in, pedals up, down, left, right with both feet independently, processed. I wrote some software. It runs on a Teensy Arduino. You have 80 unique outputs, 80, with just your 2 feet. The first 24 are the most simplest to use. The programming I've done on the Teensy allows any conceivable keyboard character or combo, mouse output, joystick output with just your feet. I've got over 200 special characters that generally take a sequence of keyboard presses to make as an output. You can assign that to a single press with your foot in any direction, any combo you want to use. I'm a hardware guy. I had this idea. I've been knocking myself out for 5 years to get this to a point where it can be used by people. I've sold 6 of the older version that are wood paneled. Those guys are all happy. The software that's running on it at the moment is hard coded. You tell me what you want it to do as outputs, it's hard coded, it's done for now. The software that's programmable with different configurations, I'm working on. You have a Unity interface similar to Rick, very similar to Rick, where you can assign whatever output you want to a combination of foot pedals and save it, switch between configurations on the fly. It's USB at the moment. I have a Bluetooth version in the works, 3D designing for the battery compartment, all that fun stuff. I'm going a little fast. This is where I'm at. It does what I say it does. It needs a little bit more refinement. I have done nothing whatsoever in the research that the 2 gentlemen before me have done. That's what I'm hoping to get towards at this point. Any questions?
Toby, I mean,
Yes.
I love the fact that you almost underplayed just how valuable this could be. Rick's device is primarily geared to the gaming side of it, which yours can do a little bit of too, but with 80 possible controls, have you ever tried using it with someone, for example, who doesn't have use of their hands, to use it as a keyboard?
Not specifically. The very last one I sold went to a gentleman who put up a video of him using it to play Halo Infinite. His hands are basically just kind of stumps, and he's got some Xbox adaptive equipment and stuff, for button pushing. And then he uses both of his feet in the Walkbox. I have no idea how to share a screen. I've got 2 monitors. I can post I think the link is in the info, for this event, but I can get that out there. So yeah, people are using it. What you asked.
Yeah, and we've played with it as well. You can configure those AT movements to be essentially almost any movement you want. Obviously, you'd need some help to get that programmed, right? But it is very configurable to.
Yes.
And I'm thinking like back to the work-life play kind of analogy here. There's so much that this could offer to people who do have issues with keyboards and mice and other things.
Absolutely. And then like gamers, who wouldn't want to have a second set of arms and another keyboard input?
Yeah, and that's actually an amazing thing too, right? With all of your products, while a lot of this talk here is centered around the medical side, and particularly the people who really need it. What I love about a good product is when it actually goes outside of just the people who design it for. And yeah, to your point there, all of these devices could be used by fully abled people as well, potentially to improve certain situations and experiences and work-life play situations.
Right. Yeah. Like, VR sickness is what inspired it. So
where are you in your funding right now? It seems like you're in the pretty beginning, right?
Very beginning. I'm totally self-funded. I like I said, I've sold a handful. I do have it patented, managed to pull that off. Jeff's really the only commercial entity that's ever seen one. Yeah, I'm dead at the very beginning. Yeah, like I said, I'm a hardware guy and I can solve all kinds of problems, but I don't know anything about getting it out there.
Well, a couple of thoughts that I have is, so at the Adaptive Tech Center, what I'm trying to do is get families to be more aware of device implementation technologies and educate themselves on how to plan for some of these diseases. Some of them are fatal within a few years, and some of them are slower progressing where, they lose mobility and function and such. And how can you incorporate different technologies, whether that's home automation, gaming, right, eye gaze, things like that. So we also work with a group called SP3 Northwest, and SP3 Northwest is about helping individuals such as yourself walk through the funding phases, grants, funding, research, device, manufacturing, and
right.
all. I'm happy to make that connection, but you said you were in Florida, is that correct?
No, I'm in Washington State.
Oh, you're in Washington, even better.
Yeah,
even
I'm
better. So
right
this is through in Spokane. And so for companies that are willing to be located in Spokane, I know that they're offering a matching $500,000 grant. So I don't know where you are in the process, if you would be approved for something like that. But I think that would be a great introduction for you to help take this device to the next level. And then we could potentially help display it so students and patients and families are getting their eyes and hands on it and can give you feedback of what works for them and what doesn't. So you can improve the device even further if you're interested.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was hoping to connect with.
Awesome. And this goes to all three of you. I just know all of you are kind of located in different locations, but I'm happy to make any introductions as well if you're interested.
Anyway, the big geared one, I did plan to motorize, and finesse it a little bit more. This is literally the first one I designed 6-7 years ago. I got frustrated about having to need 6 or 7 motors. So I designed a transmission that uses a single motor to drive 6 output shafts independently, one at a time. So I'll incorporate that into a future Walkbox model that will allow the user to totally customize, like the width between the paddles, the pressure of the bottom plate, how hard it is to press, that kind of thing, just through the software. That's planned.
Toby, something you mentioned there that I know you're a tinkerer, if that's the right word for really, that doesn't do you justice. You play around with a lot of ideas that you have, and I think everyone can see in the background just the equipment setup you have, which is pretty impressive. Can you even talk about some of the adaptations of the Walkbox that you've made? For example, I know you've mentioned about the ARM version.
Oh, yeah, the move tube is what I call it. And it's essentially the same physical design, separate units. And you just put your arm inside it and press down, up, left, right, kind of the same physical concept, but again, giving you switches in all directions, and you can do combos. So that was definitely a side concept there that could be done.
One thing that I'd be intrigued that you guys are all coming to related problems, not the same problems, right? But a lot of the issues, and I'll let Randy talk to this a bit, but one of the big issues when it comes to anything in the medical world is just buying one solution is tough. You almost want a suite of products, hardware and software, to be implemented so that you can solve many problems in one go. So even getting you guys connected, I think is a really good thing, but let alone hopefully some of the medical community will pool around you and try and get some of these things not only to market, but essentially getting the feedback and stuff that you guys need too.
Yeah, that's the feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the more you can get it out to the end user, the better. I think you need a lot of end user input as well. It's great that you have therapist input and so forth, but if you can find a population that can possibly use it and give you feedback, and that's crucial. You need that end user input. And once again, we can help you with some of that too. But that's really something that's really important. Well, great.
Hey, I was wondering if Tony, I'm just curious how you get 80 inputs. I struggle to get more than 16.
Okay. It's combinations of up and down, left, right. Also, the corners allows you to press 2 paddles at a time. And then all of those possible, like one down on this side and any diagonal on the other side. It adds up to 80 unique combinations. Like I said, the first 24 are the dead simplest, easiest to remember.
Okay.
And potentially you could add more too, right? Just by adding more switches.
More like by modifying the switch behavior. Right now they're just on off, whereas the software could be registering a click and release or a click and hold or a double click, and then that obviously would greatly expand the number of available outputs or simplify doing outputs. And I'm also working on pressure sensors for the bass pedal so that gradient values can be used, like throttle, etc.
I apologize if I missed this. So this is completely mappable. You can make changes in the inputs. If somebody has more movement in one direction versus the other, you can possibly make that like an A selection on an Xbox and so forth. Or is it basically hard-coded?
Okay, I'm not sure I followed the first half of that.
So
go ahead.
So if you have the ability to just go up and down, and you can do that in maybe move your knee side to side. Can you, what I'm saying is you have limited degrees of freedom,
okay,
limited movements, and you want to play a specific situation where you need like maybe 8 inputs. It's a simple game. Okay. Can you map those accordingly for that specific game or not?
You can map anything to any combo.
Okay.
Any combo press can have any output at all, including a sequence of outputs, a string of keyboard presses.
Great, thank you.
Sure, yeah, good question.
Yeah, you can do that with mine too, Randy.
Yeah.
So you can map it as Toby acknowledged. So I think that's we do have that in common.
And Gabriel's device, there's no reason at all, like you said, that can't be software programmed to do multiple things.
I think the challenge for all three of us is similar in that unless there's some magic, I know I can 3D print these, but they cost about, my devices cost about $600 to print, just print the plastic. Injection molding is I've been quoted about 80,000 for the molds, the tooling, and so as a startup, that's pretty daunting to have, you know, put in your order for your first 500,000 or 1,000 units.
No.
If Toby has a better way to do it, I'd love to hear it.
No, I don't have a better way. I'm not there yet.
Okay.
This is the most recent design. It's 100% 3D printed, finally, instead of me cutting wood panels. You know, a little bit less parts to move around. I'm selling it at the moment for 200.
Well, if you can print them on your own printer, that's great, because it is inexpensive to print on your own printer. The problem is you can only print that printing that one probably takes a week.
Yeah, probably. This is actually the very first version for fit and, you know, all that fun stuff that I've got put together. So it's been done in pieces. Yeah, but yeah, and that's why I have 6 printers, so I can actually do some serious output.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, you are correct. You are correct. Doing it my way is not the way to go long term, definitely. But it lets me get them out under people's feet.
Yep. No, that's definitely what we're doing. Is getting people testing it and such. It's a little more challenging in VR though, because VR, unless you go to standalone headsets, you need the content maker to accommodate your device, accommodate input from your device.
I totally agree on that.
I can emulate a gamepad, for example, but there's only like 3 games on a Quest 2 that support or common games on a Quest 2 that support a gamepad input.
Right.
I can do custom SDK.
Rick, that's an interesting question that actually should be brought to a larger group. So there are several forums or consortiums of people and companies trying to get together to build a standard of input devices, essentially. And so you follow that standard, and then your device will work on all those devices. Obviously, the industry itself is still so new and fresh that these things are still coming together, but they are there. OpenXR is one of them to look out.
Well, that's what I'm compliant with OpenXR right now. And like I said, the last I checked, I haven't checked recently, but the last I checked, there were only a handful, and you couldn't even search for them for a while, but now I think you might be able to search for them based on input device.
Yeah. And I would imagine your device output can look similar to a joystick output. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Gamepad, just
yeah,
looks similar to the 2 thumbsticks. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the joke of it is, it's actually not that hard.
No.
We've worked with Microsoft. We've actually, most of the games that we've created, and experiences for that matter, actually do support many adaptive controllers, and because they're all based around a joystick output. So if we can just get everybody else to follow that too. And the funny thing is, most of the hand controllers have a very similar output too, right? So it's just it's a really small piece of code.
Yeah. If they were proprietary, then we'd be good. But
right, the Walkbox is using a Teensy. It identifies as a standard keyboard, joystick, mouse when you plug it into anything. So as long as it can use that, it should work.
Yeah, so that's on us all. We got to get word out there that they got to support more devices in an open way. It's around the corner. It's going to be happening.
Well, especially on the training side of the world. I mean, I think the companies building games, they're so focused on sort of the standard hardware. That's my impression. And sort of the standard mode is standing up, so they don't really care about seated devices. But I know like 3D Rudder had to pay some money to Sony to get some license to work with them, and they wanted to work with Microsoft, but Microsoft wanted 100,000 to get their Xbox proprietary permission. So I don't know. I mean, that's a little bit of a more hurdles. That's why that's the only reason. And somebody mentioned that I was focused on games. It's the only reason I'm focused on games and not VR is because I can immediately work with games, just like Toby can.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing you could look out into the VR world is a lot of, not all games and not even that many of them, but there are definitely a good few out there that you can actually make a pancake mode or a 2D version of the game, right? That's playable. And there are a lot out there that do that. And my guess would be most of those would support your inputs.
Oh, okay.
And unfortunately, there's more money in games than in VR right now. Is that correct, Jeff, you think?
There's more money in games than almost anything, right? Apart from one big industry.
That's why I hate using the word games and virtual reality, because they don't go to, I mean, you use VR for gaming, but to me, that's not the primary thing.
Right. I mean, I foresee somebody, especially older people, or anybody who wants to take a tour as people develop content around. So if you want to take a tour of Paris or a tour of somewhere or a museum, and you don't want to have to walk around or march in place or use your hand controller and get sick, like Toby was mentioning, the foot controller gives you that capability to move gradually. And actually, interestingly, I've also in my demo, I found that the cool thing is when I'm doing my foot controller in a VR space, I can detach the head movement from my direction of travel. And that really helps me because, and that might be also another reason it's better for VR sickness, is that I can anticipate and I can look around the corner as I'm turning. I'm not actually just turning with my body. I'm actually looking ahead.
Yep.
And I believe there was somebody at Iowa State that did a study on and found that using the feet, even with I can't remember what the mechanism was, resulted in lower VR sickness.
Yeah, you might want to check the chat because I've been posting some links I've been finding. The state of accessibility in gaming. The last one is the accessibility.com. And so, yeah.
And I'll say this, and so I would love to focus on accessibility. What I've heard from investors, and like I say, there's an $80,000 hurdle to get into any kind of manufacturing for me. You know, I haven't found anybody, and I talked to Mark Barley at Able Gamers. He's like, yeah, I mean, it's that unless you can get an NSF grant or maybe there's an FDA grant that I hadn't checked. I didn't know about that program. But if somebody knows about grants or people who will fund accessibility devices, that'd be great. But what I found is investors don't, even with those million numbers, they don't really care because they want the billion numbers.
Capitalism at its best.
There are definitely some grants out there for these kind of situations. They're just a bit harder to find for the same reasons, right? They're not billions, they're millions. And so it's money sells money, right? But this is, again, part of this whole reason we have this group is to build that community, to try and help get the word out there.
Yeah, well, if anybody has any suggestions, I'll follow up on the I think the FDA link up there, and then I'll check the rest of these too.
A question for Randy: do you know if it exports all of the chat as well that we could save and send to the group too?
I will certainly try that. I will save the chat. It might be separate. It may not be in the video itself. But I can send that to the group. At least
it's there. It's under the triple dot menu.
Okay, thank you.
I also wanted to add that there is a conference for game accessibility that I was not able to attend, but I thought it was really interesting. And there is also a gaming accessibility conference in Europe. I think that one took place maybe it's going to take place in April. I'll try to send you that link for that in case that also helps, Randy. So maybe you can share that with the group. But there is also another one that's the Game Developers Conference, and they have been focusing recently on gaming and game accessibility. There's actually a specialty interest group that discusses that. So maybe that could be another place where you can raise awareness by sharing some of your products and also the limitations that some of the game developers are creating in this case because of all the things that you have just discussed. But that would be two places that I can think of. And there is a Discord channel that is related to this gaming accessibility. And there's a lot of game developers that continuously post things over there and resources that I think would be useful. So I can share that with you too, Randy, if that helps. I'm on my phone, that's why I'm not sharing things on the chat right now, but I can send you via email.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, great. At that, I think we're right up at the hour. Is there any closing comments anybody wants to make? We'll take a couple minutes, or if there's any pressing questions for any of the group.
I just thank you for putting this together, Jeff and Randy. I think it's and it was great to see Gabriel and Toby's products. You know, I'm open to ideas if you ever want to collaborate. And I think in Gabriel's case, you may want to consider just plugging your device into an Xbox adaptive controller and let that do all the work. It's just a little different, but it also adds $100 to your product.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, I'm grateful for being here for this opportunity. And if you have any questions or want to reach out, feel free. And yeah, thank you guys a lot.
Pretty much the same.
Well, thank you all. That was a great conversation and a lot of great sharing. And we really appreciate you attending and participating in this group. So we will be getting back together again. I believe it's going to be, Jeff, is it going to be July, I guess? If you have any ideas for themes or presenters, please shoot them to Jeff and I, and we will certainly entertain those suggestions. We would appreciate them. Jeff, do you have any?
One of the areas we're looking at doing is something special about AI in this field. There's a whole lot of stuff going on that actually it's hard to keep your finger on the pulse because there's so much activity. But luckily, you know, we're playing in this space every day. But we'd like to get a couple of extra speakers to talk on that, and then similarly from software in this industry too. So that's a couple of themes coming up. But if anybody's got any additional ideas, please shoot them our way, and we'll stick them on the docket.
Great, thanks everyone. And
yeah, thanks for the invite, Jeff.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
And welcome.
Cheers, everyone. Great discussion.
Bye-bye.